And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby 411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and let's talk Major League Rugby playoffs. Playoffs. Yes, if you get that reference, I'm sorry. I'm not only aging you, but I'm aging myself as well. But let's talk playoffs as we are entering in the last 2 weeks of the 2022 Major League Rugby season, and it has been an exciting season, leading into some amazing playoff scenarios. We have, with the expansion of the playoff system this year to 3 teams per conference, we now still have, leading into the final 2 weeks of the season, we have 4 teams in the Eastern Conference and 5 teams in the Western Conference, numerically and theoretically still in position for one of those 3 playoff spots. We also don't have any team locked into any position yet. We still don't even have a team theoretically with the overall number 1 position in the entire league, meaning that if they make it all the way to the conference, to the championship game, they will host the championship game. In Major League Rugby, there is no neutral venue yet for the championship game. The highest placed team hosts the championship game. Last year, it was hosted by the LA Guillotinis, your reigning and defending MLR champions, and it was hosted at the world-famous Coliseum. It could happen again. We will dive into it because I know as much as exciting as the season has been, not everyone has necessarily been paying attention to it, but it is getting down to a very, very exciting finish. So I want to do, with this video, try to break down every scenario because I love playoff scenarios. I love figuring it out, all the different scenarios that could happen. There's so many of them as we lead into the final 2 weeks. I'm going to do my best to break down each and every one of them. So it also gives you guys some really important storylines and the emphasis on the importance of almost every game coming up for the next 2 weeks. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pull up, we're going to focus on the Eastern Conference first, and we're going to pull up the Eastern Conference standings. And as you see right now, New England at one time, almost the sure lock, and they still are. They still do have a very good shot of winning the overall number 1 position in the entire league. They sit at the top of the Eastern Conference 12-2. Their last loss, though, the Toronto Arrows, was a very, very interesting wrinkle in things. But 12-2 with 56 points. Rugby New York is second. Technically, Rugby New York and Atlanta are tied in second place, 9-5 each with 47 points each. Both of them are fighting over the number 2 and the number 3 position. Again, with the playoffs the way that they are, the number 2 and the number 3 team will face off against each other. The number 2 team will host, so it's very, very important to get that number 2 spot because you want to host. As we know in Major League Rugby, home field advantage is a thing, so you kind of want to host it. The first place team gets that bye, which is important as well. And then the winner of the 2 and the 3 spot obviously plays at the number 1 spot. The winner of each conference then goes to the championship game. And then again, as I mentioned before, the team with the overall better record and the better points ends up hosting the game. So right now, those 3 teams are battling. And then the Arrows, the Toronto Arrows, surprisingly enough, are the team on the outside looking in. They theoretically still have a chance to make it. They are 8-6 with 40 points. And so I'm going to try to slide in, hopefully I can do this, I'm going to slide in the next 2 weeks of games for the Eastern Conference. And what I like about with the Eastern Conference is theoretically all 6 teams in the conference has a say in these playoffs. Now theoretically, numerically, the Old Glory and NOLA are out, but they can easily play spoilers in these playoffs. So, starting with Week 17, coming up this weekend, we have Toronto at Atlanta, Saturday, May 28th at 12 p.m. We have Rugby New York at Old Glory on Sunday, May 29th at 11:30 p.m. This is all Pacific Standard Time, by the way. And then NOLA at the Free Jacks, Sunday, May 29th, 3:30 p.m. So the Arrow and Atlanta game is really, really crucial The Arrows, as I said before, are the team on the outside looking in. The Arrows need to win both of their games, and more importantly, they cannot let either Rooney or Atlanta win a game. So the fact that Arrows are playing Atlanta in Week 17 is pretty much an eliminator game for the Arrows. If the Arrows lose, they are out of the running. Atlanta gets themselves in. And both for Rugby New York and Atlanta, if they happen to win any game in 17 or 18, they are automatically in the playoffs. So, yeah, a very, very important game, the Arrows and Atlanta game. As I said before, with it coming to the Arrows and to New York, the New York game against Old Glory. Old Glory has a good chance to play spoilers. New York hasn't exactly been consistent. Old Glory has proven to be a pretty dangerous opponent nowadays, and it is in a veterans. At Segra Field. So home field advantage can be a pretty important factor there. And then as we move to Week 18, we have Atlanta at NOLA. Friday, Week 18, we have a very interesting slate of games. We have 3 Friday night games right here, 2 of them. Friday, June 3rd, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Atlanta and New Orleans. And then also Rugby New York and the Free Jacks play Friday, June 3rd at 4 p.m. 2 very important games in the Eastern Conference at the same time. Kind of sucks for fans. You're probably going to have to bounce back and forth between the Rugby Network to watch those games. But 2 very pivotal games. And then if the Arrows are still in the playoff picture, Old Glory and Arrows play Sunday, June 5th at 9 a.m. It is possible that that game might mean nothing but bragging rights at the end between 2 teams that are out of the playoffs. But again, if the Arrows beat Atlanta, and if Atlanta loses once again to NOLA Gold on Week 18 on Friday, Arrows still have a chance to make the playoffs if they can beat Old Glory. Now, going back to Week 18, Rugby New York and the Free Jacks is obviously a very important game. New England really just needs to win 1 game to get not only first place locked up in the Eastern Conference, but the overall number 1 position. So right now, that loss to Toronto kind of set them back a little bit, but all the Free Jacks need to do is they need to just win 1 game. So whether it's going to be against NOLA or whether it's going to be against Rugby New York. So that New York game could prove to be very, very important, or it could be a game that the Free Jacks might not want to take too seriously because they might have the number 1 overall position locked up if they beat NOLA at Week 17. So again, NOLA can play spoiler, and again, they've been kind of inconsistent as well, so they can prove to be pretty dangerous if the Free Jacks take them lightly. Now, one other thing to kind of look at with Rooney and Atlanta are both tied. If they remain tied, for example, if they win both of their games at the end, the way that the tiebreaker system works, it goes by first how many games you win overall. It's by points. So if you tie by points, that's why points are more important than wins. It's whoever has the most points. So every point matters, and in rugby you can win bonus points for having the most having 4 tries scored in a game. You can also win a bonus point by losing if you're within 7 points of the person that beat you. So every point is important in a game. If Rugby New York and Atlanta end up tied at the very end, because they're tied right now, what happens is it goes by points, it goes by wins overall, and again, Rugby New York and Atlanta are both tied at 9-5. So if they both win both of their games at the end of the season, they'll still be at 11-5. Then it goes to point differential. So points again matters. How many points you score against your opponent, and then how many points your opponent scores against you. And right now, Atlanta is at a whopping plus 91 points scored. They've scored 91 more points than their opponents have scored against them. And surprisingly, Rugby New York is only plus 8. So really, if Atlanta just keeps winning, and even if Rugby New York keeps winning, Atlanta has the edge in point differential, and they will probably get that number 2 spot. So again, a lot of things are very, very important in this. Obviously, if the possibility that New England doesn't win, I mean, very slight possibility, New England finishes the season against NOLA at home and at home against Rugby New York, which again is a very, very important game. There is the slight possibility that New York or Atlanta can jump over New England to get that number one spot, but because New England has 56 points, Rooney and Atlanta only have 47. Theoretically, Rugby New York and Atlanta have to win at least with 5 points. That means they have to score at least 4 tries in every win for the next 2 games to get 57. And they also got to hope that New England doesn't score at least 1 losing bonus point. Because also New England, if you look at the point differential, New England is, I believe, their points overall, they have plus 81. So Atlanta can kind of compete with them. But right now, New England is at least well ahead of Rugby New York. So unless New England loses by a lot of points, New England still has a slight edge over both Rugby New York and Atlanta. But again, there is a possibility New England still does not have that number one seed secured or the overall seed secured. They have to win at least their next game in order to do it. But that is the scenario in the East. So again, lots of things can play. The next few games, all 3 of those games, Arrows in Atlanta, Rooney and Old Glory, NOLA and Free Jacks, all those games are still super, super important in the way the playoffs work out. Now, let's move over to the Western Conference where things are even more intriguing. As you see, we have 5 teams in the running here. We have LA at the top, and I'll admit to you, I'm shocked by that as well. As much of an LA fan as I am, I did not imagine this scenario playing out. LA is at top 10-4 with 49 points. Austin right behind them, 10-4 with 48 points. They're just 1 point behind. Again, that's how important bonus points are. Right now, LA controls their destiny in owning and holding that number 1 spot and possibly number 1 overall. I'll go over a little bit more on the possibility that LA could end up having the number 1 overall position yet again. Sabercats come in third with 9-5 at 46 points. And then the 2 teams on the outside looking in the Western Conference, we have the San Diego Legion 8-7 with 42 points, and Seattle with 7-7 with 36 points. Now, San Diego's an interesting team because they are the only team with 1 more game than everybody else. So unfortunately for San Diego, everybody has 2 games left. San Diego is the one team that will have a bye at the end of the season. So their next game, I'll pull up the Western Conference schedule, the next game is their last game of the season. So it's a very, very important game. But as we look at the schedule for the Western Conference, the first game in Week 17 is going to be even more important. Sabercats at the Seawolves. Again, a Friday night game, May 27th, 7:30 p.m. We'll pause it right here because this game is super, super important. It's the possibility if Houston wins the game or at least gets a tie or 2 bonus points, Houston eliminates mathematically not only the Seawolves but also the Legion out of that game because the Sabercats will have 48 points. Like I said, the Legion only has 1 game left at 42 points. The most points they can win, the most points they can earn in a win is 5, so they'll be 1 point short. And then Seattle with only 36 points. The most points that they could possibly win is 10 with 2 games left. So if Sabercats get at least, actually, if the Sabercats get at least 1 point, so they don't even need 2 bonus points, not even a tie. If they only get 1 losing bonus point, they have eliminated Seattle from the game. So Sabercats beating Seattle theoretically eliminates them and again eliminates San Diego. So that game, super, super important. Moving on with the rest of the games from Week 17, Giltinis at Utah, which will be a very, very tough game for LA. We'll go more into that in just a second. That's Saturday, May 28th at 1:30 p.m. Again, all times are Pacific Standard Time. And then the last game of that weekend, Legion at Gilgronis, Saturday, May 28th at 5 p.m. Again, that game will be interesting because theoretically, the Legion could be eliminated already before going into that game, but I have a feeling that San Diego will want to finish the season with a strong win. They won't have to worry about any other games to play, so I feel they can just go out swinging and proving a point, taking down one of the better teams of the year with the Gilgronis. In Austin is going to be a challenge, but they can do a lot of help to LA with winning that game. We'll go more into that in a little bit. And then Week 18, very important game too. Gilgronis at Houston. Friday, June 3rd. Again, that weird Friday, that last week, there's going to be 3 Friday night games. This is the late one, Friday, June 3rd, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then the Seawolves at Guillotines, the very last game of the season. Sunday, June 5th, at the world-famous LA Coliseum, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. By that point, things might be completely secured for LA. It'll be interesting to see how strong of a game they will want to play on that one. But let's go back with the Gilgronis and Houston. That's going to be an important game because by that point, it's possible that Houston and Austin are fighting over that number 2 position. Again, SaberCats are only 2 points behind Austin. If Austin loses their game against the Legion, theoretically, it's a possibility that the SaberCats can jump over Austin if they beat the Seawolves, eliminating the Seawolves and San Diego, and then beating Gilgronis as well. So again, that number 2 position, just as important as the number 1. If you can't get the number 1 spot, you would probably want the number 2 spot so you could host the playoff game. And man, as I mentioned before in one of my prior videos, Houston is looking like the most dangerous team in the West. I definitely don't want to play them. I definitely don't want to play them at home for a playoff game. So that's going to be really, really interesting to see. That game, Gilgronis and SaberCats, might actually end up being the first match of a back-to-back where in the first playoff game, Gilgronis will have to play the SaberCats again at Houston if the SaberCats end up jumping Austin in that with the points. Now, the way that this works, if LA can win a game with 5 points and Austin loses just 1 game, LA has secured the number 1 spot in the conference. Now, overall number 1 spot, the only way that can happen is that if LA wins both of their last games, and then if somehow New England loses the last 2 games, because right now LA is at 10-4, New England is at 12-2, they would be tied with wins overall. But the point differential, wow. When I was talking about how impressive it was that Atlanta has plus 91, LA is plus 161 in point differential. And that's not even the biggest surprise, or not surprise, but the biggest number. Austin is just 1 point behind. If the way it works out, LA and Austin somehow tie by points, and that's a possibility. LA and Austin win 1, lose 1. LA wins with 4 points. Austin wins with 5. They'll be tied at 53 points. Point differential. LA is plus 161. Austin is plus 215. So Austin well ahead. They have the most points scored against opponents, the least amount of points scored against them. So Austin way ahead with those points. Again, so important how many points you score. So important how many bonus points you could secure. Every point matters. It's how important those games are. So again, nothing has been secured yet in either the Eastern or the Western Conference. No team has secured any spot yet. Only thing that has been secured is that LA and Austin are in the playoffs for sure. There's no way that they can lose out of the playoffs, but either one of them can end up that number 3 spot. They're at 1 and 2 right now, but there is a scenario where they can both be jumped. The SaberCats can technically jump both of them and be the number 1 team in the end. It is a possibility. New England has a playoff spot as well in the Eastern Conference. And again, theoretically, they can slide down to that number 3 spot as well. It is a possibility. There's a lot of factors that have to go into them not doing that, but it is a possibility as well. So, I know that was a lot of information to take in. If you want, you could rewatch this video a couple of times just to make sure you got all the scenarios correct. But man, lots of important things coming up. Again, just focusing on next week's slate of games in particular. If the Arrows lose to Atlanta, the Arrows are out of the playoffs. If the Seawolves lose to the SaberCats, Seawolves and the Legion are out of the playoffs. But those teams can still affect the other teams in the conference because, again, well, maybe not the Arrows, but definitely Legion can make an effect by beating the Gilgronis. Seawolves maybe can have an effect on the Guiltinis if it comes down to it. It's a possibility as well. But, man, honestly, the way that this season has turned out has been pretty exciting, and the playoffs has made it even more exciting. So, hopefully that worked out and has gotten you pumped as I am for the playoffs. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. I might make another video after week number 17 just to see what playoff scenarios are left. It's a possibility that things are secured in certain spots. There's a possibility that things are still not secure in anything. It's been one of those kind of seasons where there has been upsets, and there could be some in this week in week number 17. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts and who you're rooting for in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you on the pitch.